I'm very excited to introduce you to today's guest. Stacey Olson is a leadership and positive psychology certified coach. She helps leaders and professionals, many of them working parents, create more balance and less stress as they juggle being a parent, a high performer at work, taking care of themselves, and all of the other aspects of their life. She is also a good friend of mine who often helps me reframe my thoughts when I'm frustrated or overwhelmed. Today, we're going to cover some really important topics: mom guilt, setting boundaries, and creating balance in our lives. I think you're going to love this conversation. I want to note that during our conversation, you're going to hear Stacey mention a document that she has with examples of specific language that you can use when it comes to setting boundaries. After we finished recording, I followed up with her, and she was kind enough to share it with me so that I can share it with all of you. You can find it in the show notes on my website. It's sleepandwellnesscoach.com/episode 89. And before we dive in, I just want to note that everything that Stacey shares today is intended to be educational only. Hi, I'm Allison Edgety, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of two. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. Well, hey, Stacey, I'm so excited to have you on the show. You and I talk often, and I think my audience is going to really enjoy getting to know you. So, as way of background, we met at a business event several years ago and immediately gravitated to each other. I think many parents are going to relate to what can feel like the ongoing struggle of finding balance in your life. And I don't know a single mother who hasn't dealt with mom guilt, which can really play into that struggle of how do we create balance in our lives and how do we set boundaries. So, we have a lot to discuss today. But first, I always like to start by asking my guest what inspired you to get into your line of work?
Thank you for having me here, Allison, and hello, everyone. So that's a great question. What started it, and what really started this all is, I used to be feeling guilty all the time, was terrible with boundaries, had no balance in my life, and still on the outside things look good. And so I always like to tell a quick story with this. Our kids, when they were younger, they went to a daycare. And so when I was still in my corporate career, my husband and I would drop the kids off in the morning and we'd be in our suits and strolling in and smiling. And then we'd pick them up at the end of the day. And there was this 18-year-old girl working there. And she would always say, "Oh, you guys are just the perfect power couple. You're just the definition of success. Like, look at you, happy family, happy careers." And it's like, okay. And then one day I stopped to talk to her and I said, "Hey, Valerie, I know that, it might look the part, but here's what it really looks like. I have to go to the bathroom. I haven't had lunch yet today. I have not taken a break. I have a few hours left of work to do tonight. I have no idea what we're having for supper. The house is a disaster. I've been here 5 minutes and I've already yelled at the kids because they were taking too long. And to top it off, I have a panic attack once or twice in the morning. And so while things can look good on the outside and I have really happy with my family and life, um, you know, it's kind of a mess on the inside. And that's what life was like. And it got to the point where it was starting to affect my relationship with my husband and kids. And so I made the point in my corporate career, I was working 60, 70, the odd time 80 hours in a work week, which is just crazy to me now, to stop working outside business hours cold turkey. And I had no idea how I'd make that happen, but I put that hard boundary in place. And it gave me more time for my personal life. But the unexpected thing that happened is I started to perform better. I learned how to say no. I prioritized better and I got a promotion. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm working way less and doing better. and there's something to this. And so that's really what, when I left my corporate career, trained in this is what I help clients with, and I live it myself today, because I'm certain I would be a burning out business owner if I did not apply all the things that I'm going to share.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to relate to that story. I know I do, although you probably looked the part better than I did. There were definitely days I went into daycare and was like, "Oh my gosh, we were up all night because she didn't sleep," and I was probably more frazzled than you were. But I think maybe the daycare knew what a mess I felt like, but my work definitely did not have
Right.
any clue until I really had a conversation with my manager at the time, and it was around sleep training, and said, like, "I've got to fix this. I cannot go on." But I think they were surprised, like, "Wow, it really looks like you're keeping it all together," when I wasn't. So I
Yeah.
know people are going to relate to
Yeah.
that story.
And I think that's the thing, is I was showing up good in my work. I could like play the part, but then when things got home, it's like I was grumpy. I had no energy. I like, kind of behind the scenes, things did not look so smooth.
Totally.
Mhm.
So we have a lot that I want to cover today, and it's hard for me to know with this big topic exactly where I should begin. But let's just start kind of from the beginning. So when you think about that shift that happens when you become a parent, I think it's big and I think it's noteworthy, and I'm not sure it gets talked about. So prior to becoming a parent, most people are just focused on their careers, the personal life. Then you become a parent and suddenly you feel a love and a pull towards another human that you've never experienced before and you really can't prepare for. I know people tell you
Mhm.
about it, but you really can't prepare for it. And then you come to realize that you are totally responsible for making every decision for this new baby. And I think that weighs heavily on people. And then you're shifting back to wanting to prove to your job that you can still be just as great as you were before you became a parent, because I think there's a lot of that pressure. And these are really big areas. And they kind of collide into each other. And I remember having days where I wasn't feeling like I was the high performing professional I had previously been and expected myself to be. And I definitely also had a lot of days where I didn't feel like I was performing as a parent as I'd wanted to and or I had anticipated being. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that transition into parenthood.
So, another great question. One thing I got to highlight is I'm in Canada. So, when we had our first kid, I believe we have more time for maternity leave. So, uh, we had, like, I had a long time with
How
my
long?
first
How
kid.
long?
We get a year.
Oh, wow. I had 12 weeks.
Absolutely. So, like, I have so much acknowledgement and compassion and, kudos to those of you who go back when you have only had 6 weeks or you've only had 12 months. So I think that's one thing I just want to acknowledge is I did have more time and space. And I actually found it easier going back when I had one child. I felt, and I'll talk about things to help with that transition to parenthood, but I felt like it was manageable. Where once I had two kids, that's where really the rails, like everything went off the tracks. And I found it just different personalities were like, that's where for me, it really like became a really big challenge. So one, making that transition to parenthood, you're right. Like it, it's just such this like time where you're like, I want to be the best mom and I want to be, and especially if you're going back to work, I want to do great in my work. And it can also bring up a lot of guilt or a feeling of like not doing a good enough job. So one, I want to say like an important thing for whatever stage you're in is to grant yourself grace. I think we are way harder on ourselves and don't give ourselves enough credit for how you are showing up and what you are doing. And so I always love to start there with really looking at, it can be very easy to look at all the things that you feel like you're not doing well or not showing up. And it's really important at like every single day to be giving yourself credit and looking for, okay, what are the wins? How am I showing up? What did I do today? because it's too easy to look for all the things that maybe aren't going the way you want. So I just want to acknowledge, and that's like huge to do. And then as far as like making that transition, whether it's early on, whether it's, I was after that year, it's really important to take time to think about what really matters to you and what really are those priorities in your work. Because I always like to say you can have it all when you stop doing it all. And so it comes with going, okay, if I want to perform great in my work and I want to be a great mom and I want to show up in these other important areas of my life, it's like, what really matters in that? What is most important within that? What are the 1 to 3 things that you want to make sure that you get right and are aligned with your values and how you want to show up and your character, and focus on that. Because if you're trying, and I know you're going to do other things as well, but it's about getting closer to the heart of what really matters, because then it gets easier to let that guide your choices. And so even thinking about what you want your day or what you want your week to look like. I think oftentimes we think we just got to do it a certain way without stepping back and going, okay, what's really going to set me up for success with my schedule? What is a time that would be to drop my kids off at daycare that would make things well or easier in my day? When is my end day for work that would make it easier with my kids? And starting to think of it not so much as like managing your time, but managing your energy. What would set you up for success in your day and your week for it, knowing it's not going to be perfect and there's going to be things that go wrong, but there are things you can do to be more intentional designing your days. And I think that's something my husband and I, we did a lot of things not well, but we did think about like, how can we have set up our routine and schedule in a way that would work for us in the best way. And then the other piece that I just wanted to speak about is that's been a big learning for me is also anytime I try to mix my work and my kids, it doesn't go very well. I feel like I do a crappy job at both. It's very stressful, even now today. And I mean, we had to do that with COVID a lot. Like I had to learn this all over again. And so for me, a big key to success, and I never used to do this when I was burning out. I would, work when my kids were there and I found it more stressful, is I try as much as possible to keep it separate. So when I'm working, I'm working. When I'm with my family, I'm with my family. And again, there's some exceptions with that, but it's really for me a motto I live by is like, be present where you are. And that's just something that helps me to show up present in the moment and not trying to have your attention split across different things. Now, I know sometimes that might be hard to do and you got to do the best you can with what you have. But if you do start thinking about your day more on like, okay, how can I set myself up in a way that's going to help me feel like I can show up as my best in my work and show up as my best at home and let that guide your choices, you're more likely to set yourself up for success with that.
Totally. And I also think as you were talking, I was thinking about my transition back to work and how I thought I did have a plan. I was anxious about going back to work. And in hindsight, I had postpartum anxiety. But I do think it's about having a plan, but then realizing you're new to this.
Mm-hmm.
And just like a lot of things with parenting, we have a vision of how it's going to go, but we also need to be flexible for how that's going to the play out, and that our best laid plans may not work out. And one thing I don't think I was doing very well because I was so anxious is allowing myself to say, this isn't working. I
Mm-hmm.
am going to shift something here, or I'm going to talk to my manager. It makes me laugh now thinking about it, but I had a great manager and she was a woman. She was not a mom, but she was a great manager. And I really was so determined to show her I could do this that I wasn't very open with her until I kind of
Mm-hmm.
broke after having my second, which you mentioned that transition, that it really broke me there. And then it also made me think of when I took my manager's role and I became the boss of the team. I had one of my top performers go out on maternity leave, and I remember giving her some like thought things to think about that I wish someone had told me about. This is going to really rock your world and you're going to not feel like you can perform everywhere. And I remember sitting in New York City in a coffee shop before I was going into a work meeting and her calling me towards the end of her maternity leave. I think she sent me a message that, can we talk today? And she said, I don't know if I can go back. I don't know if I can. Or first she said, I need to talk to you. And I said, as your friend or your manager, which one am I playing here? And she said, as a friend, I need you to talk to me. And I'm not sure I can go back. And for her, I think it was a little bit of the unknown. It was that I can't envision how I'm going to travel and leave my baby behind. I can't envision all these things. And so I remember telling her, I will support you no matter what you want to do, but I think what you should do is come back and we should feel it out. You should get back into the groove of things. See if you can find a routine. You should go on that first trip and see how it feels, because I remember not wanting to go on my first trip, but then landing in New York City and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm back. This is who I am. Here I am, and being really happy to be there. So I do think she ended up, by the way, coming back and absolutely crushing it. So I think it's also being open to it. It might have to change when you kind of head back to work.
All right, so that's a really great point, is that, yeah, we got to be checking in with ourselves, because things rarely do go according to plan. You're more likely, if you start from this place of like, what do I really want it to look like, and design from, like, work from your desired end in mind, you're more likely to create what you want. But yeah, things will happen. So checking in with yourself daily, weekly, what's working for me, what's not working for me, who do I need to have a conversation with? Like you use that example of travel. Yeah, you do travel, and if you love it, great. But let's say you didn't love it, to be willing to look at that without judgment, just go, oh, okay, that didn't work for me. Where's my opportunity? Can we like limit travel? Can we put it to a different day of the week? And just be willing to look at that. And I think that's one thing I do really good now that I never used to, is I used to be going through the motions, and I never stopped to be like, what's helping me, what's not helping me, and just like get through the day. And now it's checking in with myself each day of, how do I want to show up today? What do I need to make this happen? What's working, what's not working, and making those smaller tweaks along the way.
Totally. So let's dive into mom guilt. I started experiencing mom guilt almost immediately after becoming a mom. And I don't know anyone who hasn't experienced mom guilt at some point. And, I've been a mom for 10 years. I just think the guilt shifts. What you're feeling uncomfortable about shifts. And I've worked with, over 1,000 moms at this point, and I've just come to the conclusion that all of our guilt may look different. What makes me feel anxious or guilty is different than what may make you feel anxious or guilty or someone else. And it's different and it changes, but it's there. What I think we can do is acknowledge it, manage it, and do our best to minimize it. So I would love to hear what your thoughts are on, quote, mom guilt,
Mhm.
and your tips for letting ourselves off the hook.
All right. So, yeah, I think not I think, we all experience this. I have yet to meet a client. I work with like a lot of working moms. Yeah, everybody experiences this. I've experienced it. It's where I've learned over time how to turn the volume down on it. And so, a few things with guilt, it's that idea you've done something wrong or you're doing something wrong and feeling bad about it. And um, I have a little bit of a different perspective. One, we all feel it. Sometimes I think the guilt is warranted. A lot of times I think it's a huge waste of our mental energy. But sometimes, if you're showing up in a way that is not aligned with your values or who you want to be or how you want to show up, or what's important to you, it's normal to feel guilty. Like that's something you care about. It tells you this is something I care about and something's off. So emotions, often they're just a cue to pay attention to. Um, what do I need to pay attention to here? And so there's, yes, sometimes like think about who are the people or what's important to you that the guilt is telling you something to pay attention more. So for example, um, if I yell at my kids now, I feel guilty about it. And I'm also not surprised, I feel. Like I look at it and go, okay, what is this telling me? Like I don't want to shop like this with my kids. What do I need to pay attention to? What do I, need to do? And then the other piece of it is, and I think kind of the bigger problem with it is like we can then feel guilty about everything. And yes, you're right, it'll look different for different people, but like I feel guilty for not bringing cupcakes to the school event, or more, maybe I brought cupcakes, so I feel guilty because I didn't bake them myself. Or I feel guilty that I said no to that meeting at the end of the day because I had to leave. Or I feel guilty because I didn't respond to someone's email instantly. And that is, I think the opportunity for us all is to be like, okay, guilt will come. What is it warranted? And then what are the things that, like, no, I actually need to teach myself to let this go and to not give so much of my mental energy and attention to feeling guilty about things that, I don't need to feel guilty about. Like, it is okay to say no to some things. It's okay to make choices that are right for you. And so, yeah, I think being clear on maybe what guilt you want to pay attention to, and then what is the other guilt to just let it go. Now, when I say let it go, that is a muscle you build that takes some practice, but you can absolutely turn the volume down on the guilt. So it's being able to, like, one, notice yourself, and you can notice it by like how you're feeling, but just pay attention to what your thoughts. I'm not good enough at this. I shouldn't have done this. And if it's not making you feel very good, well, those aren't really great thoughts to be thinking. So understand that what you choose to focus on, you experience even more. So our attention is kind of like a flashlight. So the more we focus on all the reasons why to feel guilty, the more guilty we'll feel. And it kind of is like this snowball. And so for me, that was a really big lesson I had after I left my corporate career on mindfulness, learning that we can like focus our attention and that it actually wastes a tremendous amount of mental energy. And if you're trying to show up good in your work, and as a parent, understanding that, okay, I can choose to put my energy into feeling bad about this, or I can choose to put my energy into, oh, you know what, I'm making a choice that's right for me, and I'm going to let it go. And it's a muscle that you build. So I would encourage, one, think about, you know, who are the people that maybe are warranted to feel guilty about, or situations, because that's a deeper thing to pay attention to. Like, what do you really need to help you or shift in that? But then the other times where you're just like wasting your attention on it, just notice it and recognize that, like, you can move your attention. You can move it back to the present moment. You can focus on what you are doing and how you are showing up, or that you're making a choice that's right for you. And even if you have to do it 100 times a day, the more that you do that, you can build the muscle to, like, yes, the guilt will still pop up. I still have guilt pop up. It's just, I can notice it now and go, okay, that's not really serving me here. I'm going to turn the volume down on that. I'm going to move my
Yeah.
attention away from that. And you free up so much mental energy
Right. I think
doing that.
as you're talking, I thought of two examples of myself. Um, One where you're right, it was bigger than mom guilt. It just became guilt. So
Mhm.
this was when Addison, in part because she didn't sleep well, but she got so sick her first year at daycare. And I can remember this very distinct moment where she had a really high fever. She was just miserable. She would only, be comfortable if she was on my chest. And if I moved, it just sent her into a tizzy. So I was sitting up in my bed holding her. And I remember on my phone getting an email from work. And it was like, hey, can you do this? I don't even remember what it was, but I thought, no. And then I felt guilty about that. And then I remember I went on this spiral, like, if today's the day they're going to push me, I quit. Like, this is it. I'm done. I feel so guilty that she's sick from going to daycare, and I can't take on this guilt of not getting this done at work. And at the end of the day, I ended up like regrouping and just sending an email. I cannot do anything today. Addison is very sick. And of course, they were very accepting of that. But it was this combo of starting to feel the guilt from work. But to your point, I needed to hear not that I needed to feel guilty for sending her to daycare, but that I needed to, like, this is where my priority needs to be. This
Yeah.
is where I need to focus, and setting that that clear boundary there. And then I also loved when you said turn it down. I think that's such a great way to think about it. And your example of the cupcakes makes me think about I've been asked multiple times to be room mom. And usually people come to me and they say, "Well, you're so well organized and we think you'd make a great room mom." And my kids, of course, are like, "Yes, be the room mom. It'd be so great." And I feel guilty about the fact that I have zero desire. I agreed to do it 1 year. Maybe my oldest was in first grade or something, and I was a terrible room mom. I had terrible anxiety when I was in the room, and there was chaos in the classroom. I hated every second of it. And at some point, I did just turn the volume down on that. Like, I was
Mhm.
like, you know what? I can explain to my kids how this isn't my cup of tea. I can share what I would love to do volunteer wise at the school, and I do things. And I'm going to stop letting them make me feel guilty. I'm going to say no with absolute confidence every time they ask me. And I'm just going
Mhm.
to turn that down. And it creeps up, but then
Yeah.
I just turn it down.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is like one, stepping out of the spiral. And so I think we go, I want to stop the guilt. It's like, well, the guilt can still pop up, but it's noticing and then recognizing you don't need to continue on that spiral. And then one one practice that I love and live by now and heard in what you said is that if you are going to make a decision, and again, this comes back to your priorities, what really matters, you're not going to do it all. So you only have so much time and energy. So you're making a choice that's right for you, which is great. And so if you're going to make that choice that, hey, I'm not going to do it, then if you just feel guilty about it, it's like, that you might as well have gone and done it. So I always like to practice, like if I make a choice and then I start to feel guilty or feel bad about it, it's like, nope, I made my choice. I'm prioritizing what's right for me and just own that. And it gets easier to step out of it. One other little thing I want to point out where you said, hey, I'm not going to let them make me feel guilty. It's also understanding like no one can do anything to you if you don't let them. So even though someone might be like, why aren't you doing this? Why can't you do this? Recognize you also always have a choice and how you choose to think about it and focus on it. So even if someone might be like, why aren't you doing this for us, Allison? Or your kids like, why aren't you there, mom? You also have this choice how you want to view and respond to that, and that is always within your control. So it's and I say that with total empathy. I used to like always be like, they're making me do this, and now I come from like, you know what, this is what I'm choosing, and I'm going to own it, and I'm not going to let someone else make me feel guilty. I choose how I want to feel and show up here. So
Totally. Yeah, and
yeah.
you mentioned priorities, and so I would like to dive a little bit deeper in that. So, when I think about priorities, let's just take the weekend. So, in this example, we'll think about a working parent. But so you're working and then you have the weekends, and it's like, okay, well, this could be the time that I clean up the house. It could be the time I can clean out the garage, which is what my husband worked on this past weekend. Um, or it could be the time where, because I'm working, I really prioritize spending time with my kids, spending time with my partners, going on family adventures. And so it sounds simple. I feel like the simple answer, as I'm saying it out loud, is like, duh, you're going to prioritize your family. But I actually don't think it's that simple. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on setting priorities.
Great question. And um, it's an interesting thing because it's not as simple because we have lots of different demands and things we could do. And on the flip side of that is I do find it's more simple than we tend to make it. And so one way I love to prioritize, and I did this in my corporate career when I was like prioritizing, $1 million projects and budgets with executives. This is how we prioritize. This is how I prioritize in my business now, in my personal decisions, coming from this place of like, let's say there's two things you could do. If you could only do one, which one would you take? You can only have one thing done or experience one thing. That's all you get. Which one? And I know you'll want to do both, and you might end up doing both, but which one is more important? And when you get clear on what's more important, then it gets easier to make your decisions around that. So, one, it's really good to clear above all else when push comes to shove what is most important to me. what's my most important value? It might be like being present with your family. It might be going on adventures. It might be having a peaceful home, whatever it might be, and clean home. But like, what's most important above all else? Because that can guide your choices when things get a little tougher. But using that idea of what's, if I could only have one, which one would it be? It gets easier then to prioritize your weekends or how you spend your time. And I always like to say, like, lots of times people say, I got 10 priorities. Well, that's a to do list. It's like priorities is actually one, the word priority was meant to be one. But in each of those important areas of your life, go, what are my top three priorities? And when you can get clear on that, again, it gets easier to guide your choices. But then, yeah, things aren't, things might change. And so one weekend it might be, oh, I'm going to prioritize my time, clean up my house and stuff. But other times it might be like, hey, we're going to go on an adventure. And for me, a great question, and I encourage this for everyone, is like even asking yourself the question, what's most important right now that brings you back into the present moment? And so if I have a choice where I said I use that prioritization tool at the end of the day, it's like if it's been a longer day and it's like my kid wants me to go play basketball with him, or I could tidy the house. It's like if I can only have one, like which one of these is most important? It's like I'll go play with my kid. Sometimes it might be to clean the house, but it's just making those choices in the moment and also understanding that it's okay if you're not doing everything perfect. Like there's some day I'm willing to go, you know what, I'm going to leave my house a bit messier right now because it's more important for me to get outside or go for that walk and whatever it might be. So being clear on your priorities, but then also being willing to look at your time as your most valuable resource. It's like, what can you do to set yourself up to spend your time more wisely? So for example, we have a house cleaner. My husband doesn't want a house cleaner. I'm like, hey, when we have weekends, I want to spend our time. I don't want to spend our time doing a deep clean. We like tidy up through the rest of the week. We got our kids tidy up, but I want someone else to do that because that is 3-4 hours that we can use for something else. So
Mm-hmm.
understanding there's always choices and just being okay to, make choices that are more aligned with what's important to you.
Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of times people will say, I can't believe everything you're doing. So you have this business and you coach your kids' soccer team and you're doing all these things. And it's funny because it's like, we all know this. What it
Mhm.
looks like on the outside isn't always what it is on the inside. And my response to everyone is, oh, yeah, I'm doing a lot of things. You should come see my house.
Mhm.
Because I really think at the end of the day, something has to give. And when I think about my priorities, the house actually comes pretty low on it.
Mhm.
And there are absolutely days where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is too much. And it's that clutter in the house is the clutter in my brain. And will go nuts and have to clean everything. And yes, I absolutely walk into my friends' beautiful homes and I think, God, I'd love for my house to look like this. But I also prioritize taking care of myself, getting the rest I need, and spending time with my kids and my family way above keeping my house clean. But that is not for everyone because I have friends when we talk about this, we were talking about it last night at dinner, who say, I will almost have a panic attack if my house is messy. And I'm like, well, I totally get that. Then the house needs to be your priority because it's how you're your best self. I don't have that struggle.
Mhm.
So I think you're right. It's about, deciding what are the top couple things and then realizing yours is going to look different than your neighbors and your friends and what
Yeah.
allows them to function.
Yeah. And what you want to make sure though is that it aligns with your values and like ultimately what's important to you. Because where a lot of people get in trouble is actually overworking. Like very common is like work in the day, go home, take care of your kids at night, and then do a few hours in the evening of work,
Yes.
which used to like I lived that every day. And that then takes away your space and time to maybe do some of those other things like take care of yourself or tidy your house or go for an evening walk, whatever it might be. And so we're talking about kind of more on the personal side, but the work side is a big piece of it. And I think we're going to jump into boundaries, but understanding that you need time and space for all those important areas of your life and be willing to look at when one is like coming at the expense of something else. If it's not aligned, with what's important to you and how you want to show up, being willing to go, okay, I'm going to actually cut my work hours. I'm going to go back to a more reasonable week to give me time and space for these other areas. And that's a good thing. And that's a strength. And you can still be successful in your work when you do that as well.
Totally. And I just think sometimes in the work front, and everyone's situation is so unique, and I definitely know I'm thinking of this lawyer, where the deal she cut out was she was going to go home to be with her kids for dinner, but she agreed to work after they went to bed. So I know some people have a structure like that that works best for them. But then I also think with technology, we also sometimes dive in back into work when we don't need to. And I'm guilty of it too, where and you get to the kids are in bed, you've cleaned up the kitchen, and you could be reading a book or doing meditating, something to take care of yourself or spending quality time with your partner. And instead, we can't resist the urge to open the door back into the email, which then sucks us all back in. So sometimes I definitely feel it myself. And I have friends who say, oh, I just wish I hadn't even looked at that email. And it wasn't that they had to do it for their job, but we can't set our own boundaries. So let's dive in to the boundaries a little bit, because I think guilt and boundaries sometimes collide. And we had actually posted in my membership group asking parents to share some of their pain points as we were preparing to have this conversation. And several of them shared that they feel guilt about not always feeling fully focused during work hours, because that's when they feel like they need to schedule the doctor's appointments or they have to run a quick errand, uh, to grab something for their family, because that's the hours that store or whatever is open. But then they also feel guilty in the evening not answering the email and spending quality time with their kids and their partner. And this guilt can just make it really hard to set boundaries. And one mom said that she feels pressured to attend professional social gatherings in the evening. So she's a faculty member. And she said, well, there's always these events that I could attend professionally. And if I don't attend them, I'm afraid that it'll look like I'm not doing a great job at work. But then I feel badly because I'm not spending time with my child. So she kind of shared that specific example. Um, Other moms mentioned that when they travel, they feel guilty being away, but yet enjoy having some time to themselves. And so there's that conflicting, boundary setting there as well. So let's dive into boundary settings
Mm-hmm.
between that home life, professional life.
Okay. And one thing I will just say when I talk about values, it's like what's truly important to you. And that's going to look different for different people. We actually experience the most conflict when we have two values that are a bit at odds. Like, hey, I want to have this achievement in my work and I want to be present with my family. And so that can lead to, we actually feel more conflict with that. And so that's where we're back to the priorities, being clear on like what's the most important above all else, that if you have to make a tougher decision to guide your choice. And so it might be, oh, I am going to do that work thing because maybe that is what's more important to you. Maybe it's family, and just let that guide your choices. But as far as boundaries, boundaries protect your time and your energy. And they also force you to get clear on what's important and what's not. Because the looser our boundaries are, the more stressed we will be, because boundaries or limits with our time, that's actually a really useful thing because it forces us to go, okay, if I'm only, have this much space and time for this, what is most important out of this? And it starts to drive out different decisions. And there's this piece of like I said, to have it all, you can stop doing it all. I think when you look at people who are more successful and balanced, they let their values and their priorities and their boundaries and those small daily habits that guides their choices and more intentional with their time and their focus. And so there comes this point where you have to really get honest with yourself and go, what do I really care about? And what do I need to care about less? And So back to that doing those professional meetings in the evening, being okay to go, if that's really important to you, great, go do that. But if that's not what your priority, being okay to go, I'm just going to have to care about this less for now. And I'm making a choice that's right for me. And so boundaries, again, help protect your time and energy. You make better decisions with how you use your time. And our minds and bodies need time and space to recharge. So even when we're thinking between work and personal time, we weren't meant to be on 24/7. We weren't, even as women, we are not meant to have the same focus and energy and output every single day. And so our energy flexes. And so just being okay to recognize that and set up boundaries in a way that set you up for feeling good in your day or feeling good in your week. Like, what's going to set you up? So a great question I always like to do with clients and in workshops is to think about, like, what's like the last genuine good day you had, like a regular day. And, just think back to that and then write out your entire day. Like, when did you get up in the morning? What did you do in the morning? When did you go into work? What did you do with your kids? When did you take a break? When did you have supper? When did you go to bed? And just write it all out. And then be able to look at that and go, okay, where could I put some boundaries in place that are going to set me up for more of these good days? And that you can do that in your work and in your personal life. And so for me back then, it was like not working outside of regular business hours. That was a hard boundary I set, but it forced me to get clear on what's important and what's not. Um, Not having 8 a.m. meetings. I find it challenging to get, especially when my kids were younger, to get little people out the door on time and rolling for meetings at 8 a.m. That was very stressful. And so, okay, I'm not going to start meetings at 8 a.m. Yes, there might be exceptions, but just being willing to do that. Or even with your family, at the end of the day, to be willing, or like for us, we didn't have our kids in a whole bunch of activities. We were like, what is one thing? What is the one thing you want to do above all else? Let's do that, because we didn't want to be driving around to all different places. I have friends who love doing that. We don't. We like more space and
Right.
time. And so just being willing to go, what sets us up for yourself, for your family, and then go, okay, where would I put some boundaries in place to protect that? Um, and then it gets easier too with the guilt. Back to the guilt is because then again, you're making choices that are right for you. So it gets easier to turn down doing an evening event because you're like, no, I'm making this choice that's right for me. And I always like to think of it again as managing your energy, not just your time. And so, what are the things that are going to set you up to feel your best and be your best, and know your best is going to look different on different days? It's not perfect. I still have bad days, but recognizing that you have more choice and control over that.
And do you have language that you suggest for people? Because I help parents set boundaries with kids all the
Mhm.
time. And a lot of times when I wrap up with a client, they will say to me, the most helpful thing you did was give me the language to
Mhm.
use with my child. And I hear that over and over again. And so when I think about setting boundaries, whether it be personal or especially professional, I'm curious if you have any kind of go to language that you share with people.
Yeah. So great question. One, I don't know how you can share a resource, but I got some like examples that I can share if you want to link to for your audience. I like to think of it more, not specific language, but what are kind of guiding principles when you're communicating them. So one, communicating your boundaries is super important. Like, let people know what you're up to. That's really key. A lot of times we don't tell people, hey, I'm keeping this boundary. And then ways to communicate them is one, focus on what you're doing, not what you expect someone else to do. So I'll use the example of responding to emails in the evening. Let's say you're saying of a boundary that you're no longer going to reply to emails in the evening or weekends for work on your personal time. Communicating in a way that, like, hey, I'm prioritizing our personal time. I'm not going to be responding to emails in the evening and weekend anymore. Just want to let you know, I will get back to you tomorrow. I'll get back to you the next business day. But but just letting you know I won't be responding. Versus you don't want to tell the person like, hey, you can't send me emails in the evening, because what someone else does, that's outside of your control.
Mhm.
And so actually focusing on what you are going to do. I'm not going to be responding to emails or checking them in the evening. This is when I will look at it and get back to you. Um, that communicates the action you're going to take. But then also you let people know so that they don't need to, because people make up their own stories what's going on. And if I don't reply to you, Allison, if you were on my team, you don't need to worry like, oh, is she just ignoring me? She doesn't like me. She's got more important things. It's like, no, she's told me she's not replying to emails in the evening.
Yeah, yeah.
And just let people know. And we can do it. I think even like saying no, and saying no is a big thing that triggers guilt that comes up with a lot of clients, is like, you're actually already saying no all the time. So if you say no to, um, if you say yes to doing, say, that professional association meetings in the evening, you're saying no to making your personal time a priority. If you say yes to responding to emails in the evening, you're saying no to making your personal time priority. You say yes to taking on another project at work when you're already full, you're saying no to doing a good job on what you're currently on, or, not feeling overwhelmed. And so we're always making these choices. And so being able to just recognize that, we think saying no is a bad thing. We think setting a boundary might be a bad thing. It's like, no, it's actually a really great thing. And we gotta flip the script on that and look at it from like, hey, I'm doing this so I can say yes to something that matters more right now. And so I share that. That's not specific language on how to communicate, but it gets easier to communicate what you have to share when you're coming at it from a place of like, no, this is an empowering choice that I'm making for myself. And you don't need to apologize. You don't need to like, get out, I'm so sorry, I can't do this. Just like, yeah, thanks for asking me that. I'm not going to be taking this on right now. I really appreciate the opportunity. Maybe I can do it down the road, but just be okay with it.
Right. Yeah, it's I had a guy on my team who uh I think he was just sharing a story. I don't think he felt that people were pressuring him, but one day over lunch, I think he was saying that he had created a boundary for himself where he decided when he got up in the morning, he was not going to look at his phone to check email.
Mhm.
And he said, I just don't look at my phone until I've gotten up, I've eaten breakfast, and I've done my workout and gotten ready for the day. Now, he did not have children, but he said, I feel much better. My day is much better. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking, God, good for you. Good job. um, but to your point, it also really let me know, even though I had not been expecting him to return email, but thinking, okay, well, I'm probably not going to hear from him before X hour. And so, in a way, it kind of did end up setting a boundary, or I guess it
Mhm.
set my expectations on when I would hear from him. And I wasn't bothered by it at all. But I do think sometimes it's just communicating what we're doing. And I think I was just listening to a podcast yesterday, and they were talking about Jeff Bezos and something he really talks about. And what were they saying he does? I think it was around his sleep, and that he, makes sure he gets 8 hours of sleep or something. But they were saying he's really open and has communicated that. And this was an old episode from several years ago, but they just talked about that he's communicated that to his team.
Mhm.
And I thought, okay, well, these are things I think we're often nervous to do, but it's like a lot of things I think in parenting, the reality often isn't as bad as the anticipation.
Yeah. And then when we communicate them, to then follow through on it. Because the thing
Right.
is, people will take as much as you're willing to give, and not because they're bad, and not because, but like, we almost need to like, I don't like the word train, but like, people will take as much as you're willing to give. So if you're always saying yes to all the things, people are going to keep asking you to. And so that piece of it, and then also being okay and accepting someone might not like that you have a boundary
Yeah.
because it conflicts with what's important to them, and that's okay. That is all right. We're not going to please everybody. But again, if you're coming from this place of like what's important to you and letting your choices guide you, it gets easier then to honor those boundaries and what you need. And we all need space and time to recharge and space for the important areas of our life. And that is really important. And I know when I keep my boundaries, I'm a better mom, I'm a better leader, I performed better in my corporate career when I did it. And so it's important. And I'd love to see more people give themselves permission to do that.
Totally. And particularly when you know you're good at what you do. I mean, I remember some of the conversations with the head of the organization where I worked, I'd be so nervous to go in and set that boundary. So I remember going in
Mhm.
to say, I am going to be cutting back my hours to go pick up my daughter when she starts kindergarten. And I remember just thinking, this might be it. He might say, like, good luck to you. It's been nice having you. And granted, I went in willing to accept that answer. But the
Yes.
truth was, I was honest. I said, this is what I need. And I'm very confident you will get as much out of me in this short period of time if I can
Yeah.
have this ability to focus on my daughter's well being and what we need. And I shared some reasons why with him. And he was great. And he said, let's give it a go. Let's see how it goes. Let's continue to have open communication. And I remember at the first check in, he said, you're absolutely right. I'm getting as
Mhm.
much, if not more,
Yeah.
than I did from you before. And I was able to kind of have this divide that I had been weighing on me so much, where I had this time to focus on my daughter. And I ultimately there got down to 10 hours a week. And when we left, he said, the reality is I still get more out of you in 10 hours a week than there are some
Yeah.
full-time people. And so sometimes I think it's, and I talk to a lot of my friends and women I've, quote unquote mentored, is being willing to have those conversations and knowing they may not go the way you want, and then you can make a decision on what you want to do. But I think it's thinking through those boundaries and being willing to actually communicate them, because people can't help you if you don't communicate
Yeah.
what would help you perform better at
Yeah.
work and at home.
Absolutely. And I always say, like, carve out your personal time first. And it's so counterintuitive, but it'll just fill up if you don't. And then you will focus better. And so that was like where you said, hey, you'll still get the best out of me, because also, again, when we have constraints, that forces us to focus. You prioritize better. You spend
Yes.
less time procrastinating. You just get done what needs to get done. And time and time again, working less can actually prove that we can be more effective because it forces us to focus. And even when I was communicating those boundaries back then, and this is a great like language and for your audience, is that yeah, you don't have to go in and be like, oh my gosh, I gotta help my kids, I'm so sorry. Go in from this place of strength. It's like, hey, this is what I need, it's gonna help be more effective, I'm confident we can still get done what needs to get done is important. And go in with that mindset and then be willing
Yeah.
to prioritize and maybe let go of some things that aren't a good use of your time. But yeah, it can actually be a really empowering experience.
You're right. I felt I spent no time in the break room chitty
Mhm.
chatting when I started to reduce my hours, which is probably
Mhm.
why I became so efficient, because I knew that I had to be out that door at whatever it was, 2 p.m.
Yes.
And so I was super productive, and brought my lunch in every day. I never ran out to get a sandwich. I just really became a machine. And this, I
Mhm.
think, is a superpower that women have. We
Mhm.
just have to figure out how to channel it. But when we do, we can be super
Yeah.
productive. So,
And let go of doing it all. I just want to add that. Like it comes with
yes.
prioritizing to go, okay, if I only have this much time in the day, what's most important? What really matters with my time and attention? And then what matters less, and being okay to let that go. I'm not going to go to that meeting because it's not the best use of my time right now. And that is okay.
Well, I think this has been so great. And you've touched on so many great points and you've shared so many helpful little tips. But as we think about people walking away from this episode and wanting to create more balance in their life, what would be two or three things that you really hope they take with them?
Okay, great question. So, one, focus on what really matters. We all need time and space for all those important areas of our life. But what comes with that is not like doing the 10 top things in each of those areas. It's like, what's most important in your work, those top priorities. With your family, what do you want to make sure that you experience or do or are present for more than anything else? With your health, taking care of yourself. We all need time and space. So, getting clear on what really matters and being willing to focus on that more and care less about some of those things that matter less. The other piece is that your happiness and well being, that not only feels way better when you make that a priority, but you perform better when you do. And so, taking care of yourself, doing the things that give you energy and help you to feel your best, um, that is critical and that's important. And that's like the one thing, if I were to go back way back then, when you said transitioning to a new parent, it's like I would give myself permission to take care of myself more and do some of those things. It's not perfect. We might not have all the time we want for it, but there are things every single day you can do. And so making that more of a priority in yourself. And then the third thing is being present. Anytime we're feeling guilty or we're worrying about what someone else thinks, we're not present in the moment. And one of the simplest ways to stay balanced is to be present in the moment. And so practice that muscle, practice mindfulness, start to learn how to be more present, because not only will you be present with the people you care about, you're more focused on the task at hand. It gets easier to step out of the guilt, things like that. And so those are kind of the three areas: practice being present, letting go of the guilt, taking care of yourself, and taking some time to get clear on what really matters, and then be willing to be more selective on what you say yes to and what you say no to that aligns with that. Because we all need space and time for important areas of our life.
I love that. Well, Stacey, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been awesome. Can you tell everyone how they can find you?
Well, thank you for having me today. You can find me at my website, www.staceyolson.ca. I am also on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, but I hang out mostly on LinkedIn. So connect with me there, or send me a message. And even I love hearing from people after, like share a question or something on your mind. And like, I will personally respond back to you. Just let me know that you came through, with Allison, and let me know.
Perfect. Well, we will be sure to link to all of that in the show notes. Thanks again, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye for
Sounds good.
now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to How Long Till Bedtime. To learn how we can work together to improve your child's sleep, please visit sleepandwellnesscoach.com.